the reflective planning session. The reflective planning session is a coaching tool that is a pre-conference. It exists for planning purposes. Its purpose is to sit down with the teacher and think through in a way that's even deeper and even more specific than perhaps the teacher has had a chance to think on his own or on her own. So the idea of a planning session is to always choose a lesson that's 3, 4, 5 days down the road. We don't want the teacher to have it perfectly planned yet. We don't want every T crossed and I dotted. We want a little wiggle room so that we can ask some very specific questions. First of all, what are your goals for this lesson? Listen very intently to what the teacher has to say. Seek clarification if you have to. What does understand look like? If you want students to actually calculate what would be right and what would be wrong. The second thing we'll ask teachers to do is consider their activities. How are you going to teach this? Will you have students sitting down or standing up? Will they be individuals? Will they be small groups? Don't expect the teacher to have it all figured out. We really want to think through that with them. What are all the possible activities? And then examine how congruent are each of those activities back to the coaching goal. Thirdly, we want to help a teacher think through his or her assessments. What would mastery look like? Think ahead. The students are doing exactly what you asked them to do, and you're thinking to yourself, this is going well. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are the students demonstrating that tell you as a teacher they are achieving mastery just as I hoped they would? In this coaching session, it's also a good idea to always end with some feedback. Was I helpful, you might ask, as a coach? Did the process feel comfortable? Did we actually plow any new ground? Did I help you to see and think through some things that you might not have had a chance to see or think through on your own? That's the purpose of the reflective planning session. Jessica, thank you very much for participating in our coaching session. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
I know that you are an 11th grade or a U.S. history teacher in high school. And you're also the girls' soccer coach, right?
Yes, sir.
Are the girls or boys or both?
Girls. I do the girls' team. I coach the girls' team.
How's the season going?
It's going very well. We are nearing the end of our season right now, and we're entering the playoffs today. So it's been a lot of fun getting to know the girls and getting to see them not only in the hallways at school, but also on the soccer field as well.
Now, were you a soccer player too?
Yes, sir. I played soccer for about 13 years.
Did you really? Like what position? Don't quiz me. I don't know much about soccer. I still couldn't tell you what offsides was.
That's okay. Well, there's a nice field outside. I'm sure we could go out there after this. I played defense mainly all throughout my career in soccer, so I love it. It's a lot of fun being out on the field again with the girls.
Yeah. Well,
it's a lot of fun.
Well, listen, thanks again. We're going to do what's called a reflective planning session.
Okay.
And let me just give you a little bit of an outline about how it's going to work.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you some questions about an upcoming U.S. history lesson. And then I'll just sort of listen, and I'll try to be a good questioner. It's kind of like maybe you and I are attorneys and you're getting ready to do a closing argument in a couple of weeks, and I'm just kind of quizzing you like on, okay, what do you want the jury to really feel in this moment? And what we find is that if you'll allow me to just ask some questions, I'll ask some questions about your goals and what are the activities you think you might use, and what are some of the assessments that you might use to figure out how they're doing. That just the process of going through that helps you teach the lesson even better than you would have been able to if you just were thinking about it all on your own.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Great. Let's start then with your goals. You've got this lesson in mind.
Yes, sir.
U.S. history, Reconstruction,
yes,
right?
Sir.
That's sort of where you are. Talk to me a little bit about some of the goals that you have in mind for this upcoming history lesson.
Basically, my goal is to have the students understand the idea that Lincoln faced at the end of the Civil War. How do you put back together this nation that has been torn apart? And how do you get them to become one again, and for them to kind of understand the whole process, the overall concept of Reconstruction.
So sort of an initial thinking on Reconstruction.
Exactly, yes, sir.
So you said you want them to be able to understand. So let's think about that for a moment. What would understand look like? So if you were to say, okay, yes, I want them to understand the basic concept of Reconstruction. Gosh, give me some other words for understand. What do you exactly see them doing to understand Reconstruction?
I have this great idea, or what I hopefully think is a great idea, of beginning the lesson with a journal entry, which I typically like to do, and to have the students respond to the question, how do you piece back something that is broken? Will it ever be the same? And based on that, those answers, typically I would assume that the students would say something towards the effect of duct tape, super glue, you know, something like that, and then kind of transition that thought into how does Lincoln, or how can Lincoln put the Union back together? Will it ever be the same?
Now that's sort of, you're getting into the kind of the activities. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Let's just keep focused on the goals. What if I said this? Without using the word understand, talk to me about what you want them to be able to know and do. Like, do you see them explaining something to their neighbor? Are they able to write about it? Are they able to add 2 and 2 and get 4? You know, help me a little bit on what understand would really look like.
For my students, or for me to feel that my students understand the concept of Reconstruction, I would want them to be able to tell someone else about it, whether that be their mother or father or someone else in their home, or, you know, the family friend, but so that they would be able to explain it to someone else, because I think that's the #1 way that I find that I know that my students get a topic.
So by the end of the day, you want them to be able to say, all right, what's Reconstruction all about? Just give me the general idea. They can explain it in their own words to someone else, be it a classmate or you or a parent. That's what you're looking for.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Way to go. Let's then go to your activities.
Okay.
All right, so if that's the goal, I want them to be able to explain the basic thesis of Reconstruction. Then how are you going to go about getting them to that point? What are some of the things you might do?
I think journaling is a great idea at first, to just try to relate the idea of putting something back together is a great way for them to initially grasp the idea of reconstructing something. And then after we discuss the journals, I plan on bringing out a plastic egg that you can typically buy at the dollar store or somewhere like that, and take the egg apart and say, you know, we have two halves, the North and the South, and right now they're separate, but at one time they were together and they represented, you know, the United States of America. And how right now, with them being separate, how is Lincoln going to be able to put them back together, and will it ever be the same? And then what I'd like to do is get them out of their chairs, go outside to the parking lot, and place the egg on the ground and have a student step on the egg.
So a plastic egg on the ground, student stomps on it.
Stomping on it.
All right.
Yes.
Everyone's into that.
Everyone's into that, and then pick up the pieces of the egg and just say, this is what Lincoln is left with after the Civil War. How is this going to be put back together? Will it ever be the same? And the students will say, you know, maybe super glue really won't work. Or, you know, a few of them will probably say, well, you can put it back together. I'm going to say, okay, then let's find all the pieces of the egg, and we can try to put it back together. And eventually they'll understand that it will never be the exact same.
So really, that's in essence, forgive me for being a poor history student, that you're kind of trying to teach is that it won't ever be like it was. That was sort of, and that's what you want them to be able to explain.
Yes, sir.
In their own words, that putting the North and the South back together is sort of like that egg. You can do it, but it'll never quite be the same. I guess you could say in some instances that we're still putting it back together.
Exactly. And there's no one plan for reconstructing the South. And to try to introduce that as well to the students, because we'll go through the different plans of Reconstruction.
Okay, so let's just fast forward in time. You've introduced it, you've stomped on the egg, it's good and stomped, you're back in the classroom, you've got all these pieces of egg. Now, just fast, kind of towards the end of the day or the end of the lesson, you're walking around the classroom and you say to yourself, this is really going well. This is exactly what I hoped they would be talking about. What are some of your assessments? What will you be listening for to kind of get that feeling that they're getting it?
That they got it? Few things. First of all, the students, just to hear them talk about it. Walking back into the classroom, you know, some of the students, if I hear them say, oh, that was really cool, or, you know, I learned something, just also in my classroom, question and answering sessions, asking them questions and hearing their responses.
Right.
Also, I'm a big fan of exit slips as well. Giving the students an index card or having them tear half a sheet of paper and just writing down 2 things that they learned or that they liked.
So you're looking at the exit slip. So what I'm saying so far is you want to see, you're walking around the classroom, and first of all, you want to see some interest and some enthusiasm.
Of course.
Now, this is not just history. This is, I'm kind of into this now.
Of course.
And so you're going to be looking for things like how much enthusiasm they show, are they giving it good effort? Those are some of your assessments. Then on that exit slip, they're going to have 2 things I learned. And let's say that you picked one out and random, you're looking at it and you're going, man, they got it. What type of things would be on those exit slips?
That they learned that the process of putting something back together is not easy. There's no one sure solution. That they knew that Lincoln had a big problem, you know, that he had a huge task in front of him, not a problem, but he had a huge task trying to put the North and South together after they've been fighting each other for so long. And just for a basic understanding or knowledge of what Reconstruction is, just to introduce this basic concept, so then when we go into the plan of Reconstruction and what Lincoln did, the students have an idea of what Lincoln was up against.
Oh, great.
Yes,
Very
sir.
good. Let's just think then about this process. I'm just give a little feedback in the coaching session. So we talked a little bit about your goals.
Okay.
I probed a little bit there, and you talked some more about that. We talked about the activity that you have in mind for it, and then we've talked a little bit about the assessments.
Okay.
So just give me some feedback on a coaching session like this. First of all, the process. I wanted this to feel like a kind of a professional conversation, 2 people who are interested, not like an evaluation, not like a judgment. How did that go?
I thought it was very, made me think more about what I was actually looking for my students to get out of the lesson, and to try to not use the word understand. I liked how you did that, and making me think, what is it exactly that I want them to know before they leave my classroom?
Good.
And being asked that question, I have that now in my mind, that this is what I want them to be able to do. I want them to be able to explain the idea of Reconstruction to a family member or a friend at the lunch counter. And
explain it
somewhere
in a way that indicates interest and in their own language and enthusiasm. And that starts, and it says at the very beginning at least, that Lincoln was up against just as difficult a situation as me trying to put this plastic egg back together.
Exactly. Something that's not a textbook definition. They can put it in their own language, so hopefully they can remember it in the future.
Listen, good luck with the lesson.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot for being a part of our coaching demonstration.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.